Welcome to episode 29 of Covid Comms. In the aftermath of any crisis, it's important that a review is conducted to capture the lessons learned. So today, we're going to be talking about what you can do to prepare for a good review. One of my favorite quotes is by John Maxwell, who says, "Reflection turns experience into insight. Experience itself doesn't teach us anything. It's only when we take the time to reflect back on our experience that we can identify the lessons in our experience. And it's only then that we can be intentional about applying those lessons as we move forward." In the workplace, that opportunity for reflection usually comes in the form of a review. And while we're still in the midst of trying to deal with COVID-19, for many companies, it is still too early to conduct a full-scale review into how they've managed this crisis. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be thinking about that review and preparing for it right now. I recently conducted a review of a program for disengaged youth in schools. And while this program had been running for 13 years, nothing had ever been formally documented. There was no program outline, no operations manual. Nowhere was the vision, the objectives, and the processes for this program ever written down, nor were the outcomes experienced by students ever recorded. As you can imagine, that made conducting this review incredibly difficult. The lesson here is that in situations that last over an extended period of time, if failure to document your progress is going to make the review process much harder. If you haven't already, it will be a valuable exercise to sit down and write out what were the key decisions that have been made in your organization over the past weeks and months. Why were those decisions made? What were the considerations that were taken into account when making those decisions? It doesn't have to be a complicated process. Simply open up a document, put down a few dot points, and take 5 minutes at the end of every week to add any key decisions that were made over the previous week. Doing this will reduce the need to rely on your memory and try and figure out what you were thinking at a later date. It doesn't have to be complicated. Simply open up a document, put down a few dot points, and take 5 minutes at the end of each week to add any key decisions that were made in the previous week. Keep it simple, but go through the process. Reviewing performance is a discipline, whether at the individual, the team, or the organizational level. It's easy to move on to the next process, but it takes discipline to stop and reflect at the end of every project or performance or time period to capture the lessons that have been learned so that they can be applied again in the future. In the military, we call this an after-action review or an AAR because nothing in the military is ever a real thing unless you have an acronym. But whether it was a 15-minute contact drill or a 3-week training exercise or an operational mission, military personnel will religiously sit down and review the team's performance. There's nothing complicated about a good review. It's simply taking the time to stop and answer some basic questions. What was the mission? Or what were we trying to achieve? How did we go? Did we achieve what we wanted to? What could we have done differently or better? What lessons have we learned? What are the broad principles that might apply to other situations? What will we do in the future? And how and in what circumstances will we apply these lessons? Your review does not have to be complicated. Keep it simple, but go through the process. Now might not be the right time to conduct that process, but it is the right time to be thinking about it and preparing for it. A small amount of time recording your journey regularly is going to save you a large amount of time and effort when it comes to conducting your review proper. That's my thoughts on the subject. I hope you found them valuable. If you did, why don't you tell me what the most valuable part was for you? Put it in the comments box below. Share this video and stay tuned for more COVID comms. They're coming soon. Until then, lead well.